When your heart goes numb, it isn't that life has stopped giving you joy. It's that your soul has stopped accepting illusions. There comes a moment in your inner journey when the heart grows strangely silent, when the emotions that once flowed freely begin to feel distant, muted, or buried beneath a weight you cannot name. And it is in this moment that most people panic, thinking something is wrong with them. They assume the numbness is a sign of weakness or failure. But in reality, it is often the earliest symptom of an awakening, an unexpected doorway into a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. The heart grows numb not because it is broken, but because it is tired of carrying feelings that were never truly yours. It withdraws from the noise not to abandon you, but to protect you while you step into a new stage of clarity. The numbness you feel is the temporary stillness that comes when your inner world rearranges itself. For years, you may have been conditioned to react, to please, to endure, to pretend. You learn to express emotions on command, to play roles assigned by society, family, or fear. And slowly, without noticing, your emotional landscape became shaped by expectations rather than truth. When the awakening begins, your mind stops cooperating with the old script. It refuses to generate excitement for things that once distracted you. It won't create joy simply because it's supposed to. And this absence of feeling is not emptiness. It is honesty. The heart pauses not to punish you, but to show you what was artificial in your life. In this stillness, you are being invited to look inward, to understand that joy cannot be forced, meaning cannot be manufactured, and connection cannot be faked. The numbness is the silence before revelation, the clearing of old mental clutter, so that a more authentic experience of life can emerge. And if you stop resisting it, if you allow yourself to be present with this quietness, you will begin to notice subtle truths rising to the surface. You will see which relationships drain you, which habits numb you further, which dreams no longer feel alive. You will realize that your heart is not numb without reason. It is numb because it refuses to participate in a life that does not align with who you truly are. The dark side of awakening is simply the shedding of illusions. And like any shedding, it feels uncomfortable. But beneath that discomfort is a power you have not accessed yet. A power to feel deeply without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to live without pretending. When the numbness dissolves, and it will, you will not return to the old version of yourself. You will rise renewed with a heart that feels again, but this time with clarity, authenticity, and strength. Joy will return, not as a distraction, but as a natural expression of being fully alive. And you will understand that the numbness was never the end. It was the beginning of your awakening. When your heart feels numb, it is not a sign of weakness or failure, but a profound inner signal that something deep within you is shifting, unraveling, and preparing to awaken in a way that the mind cannot fully understand. This emotional silence is often the first stage of inner transformation, a phase where the soul withdraws from everything that once overstimulated it, everything that was built on noise, pressure, expectations, or unresolved wounds. And this withdrawal is not accidental but intentional. For the heart becomes quiet only after carrying too much for too long, and when the weight of unexpressed emotions, unprocessed pain, or constant pretending becomes too heavy, the heart shuts down not out of defeat, but out of protection, creating a cocoon like space where old patterns can die and new understandings can take birth. In this numbness, life may feel colorless. Conversations may feel distant, and things that once brought joy may no longer feel meaningful. But this loss of feeling is the mind's way of clearing out illusions you have unconsciously lived with, breaking the emotional habits that were built on survival rather than truth. And even though this phase feels dark and confusing, it is one of the most honest states of being because it forces you to confront what has been draining you, what has been controlling you, and what no longer resonates with who you are becoming. The world around you keeps pushing you to feel better, stay positive, or snap out of it. But numbness refuses to be rushed, because awakening is not a performance and healing is not linear. So instead of forcing joy, this silence teaches you to sit with yourself without distractions, to observe your inner landscape without running away, and to understand that meaning cannot be faked and happiness cannot be manufactured on demand. This quiet phase exposes the difference between what genuinely nourishes you and what only kept you busy. And as you sink deeper into this experience, you start recognizing that the numbness is not emptiness, but a necessary pause, a sacred stillness where your emotional system resets after years of overstimulation, allowing the mind and heart to prepare for a more authentic connection to life. In this darkness, truths begin to reveal themselves slowly, showing you which relationships feel forced, which responsibilities drain your spirit, which dreams no longer belong to you. And through this clarity, the numbness becomes less of a prison and more of a teacher, guiding you toward a version of yourself that no longer runs on emotional survival, but on genuine understanding and inner alignment. And when the heart finally begins to thaw, it does so not in dramatic bursts, but in gentle ripples, moments of quiet appreciation, small sparks of motivation, subtle waves of peace, reminding you that you were never broken, only evolving, and that the numbness was not an end, but the necessary opening act of a deeper awakening that would eventually allow joy to return not as a distraction, but as a natural expression of an uncluttered, fully conscious, authentically alive soul. When your heart begins to feel numb, it can seem as if life has quietly slipped out of focus, as though the colors have faded and the emotional world you once lived in has turned distant and muted. But this state is rarely a sign of something wrong. Instead, it is often the earliest signal that you are entering a deeper phase of inner awakening where your old patterns, beliefs, and emotional habits no longer match who you are becoming. This numbness appears when the soul has grown tired of carrying emotions that were never truly yours, expectations placed on you, identities forced on you, responsibilities you never questioned, and roles you played just to keep life moving. Over time, these emotional layers build up like armor, and the heart, exhausted from constant effort, quietly steps back to protect you from the overwhelming pressure. In this silence, the mind stops reacting in the familiar ways and refuses to generate excitement for things that once distracted you. It is not that joy has disappeared, but that your system has paused everything so you can finally hear yourself without noise, without expectations, and without the constant performance that society demands. This numbness is not emptiness, it is a clearing, a resetting, a quiet dismantling of the emotional machinery you used for survival. And though it feels uncomfortable, this stage gives you the rare chance to observe your inner world without filters, allowing buried truths to rise to the surface. Truths about what drains you, what wounds you have been suppressing, what dreams you abandoned, and what relationships have grown misaligned with your growth. As you move deeper into this experience, the numbness becomes less of a void and more of a mirror reflecting the parts of your life that were built on autopilot rather than intention. You begin to notice how much of your emotional energy was spent trying to be who others needed you to be. How often you sacrificed your own peace to maintain harmony around you, and how many of your reactions were shaped by past pain rather than present reality. This recognition is painful, and that is why the heart numbs itself, because to feel everything at once would overwhelm you. The numbness acts as a temporary shield, giving your inner world the space to reorganize and heal without collapsing under emotional pressure. Over time, as the old illusions fall away, the silence of your heart begins to make room for something new and more authentic. You start to sense subtle shifts within yourself, small sparks of awareness brief moments of clarity, gentle waves of presence. Joy does not return all at once. It returns carefully, as if testing whether you are ready to feel again, without pretending, without forcing, without losing yourself. And in this slow unfolding, you discover that your numbness was not a downfall, but an initiation, a necessary pause that allowed you to let go of the emotional noise that kept you stuck. When the heart awakens again, it does so with a deeper understanding, a clearer sense of self, and a more grounded connection to life. You emerge from this darkness not weaker, but more aware, more honest, and more aligned with who you were meant to be, realizing that the numbness was simply the quiet doorway that led you back to yourself. When your heart feels numb, it often begins so quietly that you barely notice the shift. One day you simply wake up and realize that the joy you once felt, the excitement that once energized you, and the emotions that once flowed freely have all softened into a strange silence. This numbness is not a sign that something inside you has died, but that something inside you is transforming, rearranging itself in ways the mind cannot immediately understand. For years, you may have carried emotions that were not truly yours, forcing yourself to feel okay when you weren't, showing enthusiasm when you felt exhausted, pretending to understand when you were confused, and giving more than your heart ever had the strength to give. The soul eventually reaches a point where it refuses to keep participating in this emotional performance, and so it withdraws, not in rebellion, but in protection. This withdrawal creates a space where old wounds begin to rise, illusions begin to fall, and the pressure to be who you were trained to be slowly dissolves. It is uncomfortable because you are no longer driven by the impulses, habits, or emotional scripts that previously guided your life. The numbness appears to strip away the noise, allowing your inner world to be seen without distraction. But in doing so, it leaves you face to face with truths that have long been buried beneath business and expectations. As the numbness deepens, you begin to see parts of yourself that you ignored, denied, or misunderstood. You may realize how much of your identity was shaped by external demands, how often you silenced your true feelings to avoid conflict, and how frequently you clung to routines or relationships that drained your spirit. This emotional disconnect acts as a quiet pause in your journey, a moment where life stops asking you to pretend and instead invites you to observe. The silence gives your mind the opportunity to understand where your energy has been leaking, where your emotional boundaries have been violated, and where your inner child still carries fears, disappointments, or unresolved pain. Numbness becomes a protective shell, a temporary state that shields you from feeling everything at once while your emotional system undergoes a reset. You are not broken, you are reorganizing. You are not empty, you are clearing space. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding the layers of yourself that were built from survival, not truth. In this phase, the mind becomes quieter, the heart becomes cautious, and the spirit begins to awaken in ways that feel unfamiliar. It is the darkness before clarity, the silence before understanding, the void before rebirth. Eventually, this numbness begins to soften, not all at once, but through subtle moments that feel almost accidental, quiet sparks of interest, small waves of peace, or gentle reminders that life still holds meaning. Joy returns in whispers, not shouts. The heart tests its strength, allowing you to feel again, but this time with honesty rather than obligation. As you slowly reconnect with yourself, you discover that your emotional landscape has changed. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer pretend to be fine. And you no longer chase validation that once defined your worth. The numbness taught you something invaluable. Your soul will shut down when it is overwhelmed, but it will always rise again once it is ready. This phase becomes a gateway into a deeper version of yourself, more conscious, more grounded, more aligned. You emerge not as the person you were before, but as someone who understands the importance of emotional truth, energetic boundaries, and inner peace. The numbness was never a failure. It was the silent teacher, guiding you back to the parts of yourself you had forgotten, preparing you to feel again, but this time with clarity, authenticity, and a heart fully awake.